The Battle of the Somme, fought between July 1st and November 18th, 1916, stands as one of the bloodiest and most devastating battles in the history of warfare. Set against the backdrop of World War I, this battle not only highlighted the horrors of trench warfare, but also marked a grim turning point in how wars would be fought. The story of the Somme is one of unimaginable suffering, strategic blunders, and the relentless grind of industrialized warfare. Yet, amidst the horror, it also tells a tale of human endurance and the stark realities of a conflict that reshaped the world. As we delve into this battle, we will explore its origins, the brutal fighting, and its lasting impact on those who lived through it and the generations that followed. The origins of the Battle of the Somme lay in the broader context of World War I, a conflict that had already claimed millions of lives by 1916. The war had settled into a grim stalemate, with the Western Front, a line of trenches stretching from the North Sea to the Swiss border, becoming the primary theatre of combat. For nearly 2 years, both sides had dug in, with neither the Allies nor the Central Powers able to achieve a decisive breakthrough. The war had become a war of attrition, with each side attempting to wear down the other through relentless assaults and counter-assaults. It was in this grim context that the Allies, primarily the British and French, conceived the Somme offensive. The goal was to break through the German lines, relieve pressure on the French at Verdun, and hopefully bring the war to a quicker conclusion. The plan for the Somme offensive was ambitious, but from the outset, it was fraught with difficulties. The British commander, General Sir Douglas Haig, envisioned a massive artillery bombardment that would decimate the German defences, allowing the infantry to advance with minimal resistance. For 7 days leading up to the battle, more than 1.5 million shells were fired at the German lines, intended to obliterate barbed wire, destroy trenches, and crush the enemy's morale. However, the effectiveness of this bombardment was overestimated. Much of the German defences, including deep bunkers, remained intact, and the Germans, forewarned of the attack, were well prepared. On the morning of July 1st, 1916, the first day of the Battle of the Somme, the British and French troops went over the top at 7:30 a.m., leaving their trenches and advancing across no man's land toward the German lines. What followed was a massacre. As the British soldiers, weighed down by heavy packs, walked across the open ground, they were met with a storm of machine gun fire. The German defences had survived the bombardment far better than anticipated, and the attackers were cut down in droves. By the end of that first day, the British had suffered more than 57,000 casualties, including 19,000 dead, the worst single day in British military history. The French, attacking further south, fared somewhat better, but the overall result was a disaster. The initial shock of the Somme's first day soon gave way to a grinding, attritional battle that would drag on for months. The battle became a byword for the horrors of trench warfare, where soldiers lived and died in squalid, waterlogged trenches, surrounded by mud, rats, and the constant threat of enemy fire. The conditions were appalling, with soldiers enduring freezing cold, disease, and the ever-present stench of death. The battlefield itself was a nightmare landscape of craters, shattered trees, and barbed wire, where any advance was measured in yards and came at a terrible cost. Despite the appalling losses on the first day, General Haig was determined to continue the offensive. Over the next few months, the Allies launched a series of attacks along the Somme front, each one aimed at wearing down the German defences and gaining small amounts of ground. The tactics employed were brutal and often futile. Waves of infantry were sent against heavily fortified positions, only to be mowed down by machine gun fire or obliterated by artillery. Tanks, a new and untested weapon, were used for the first time in battle, but they were slow, unreliable, and often broke down in the mud. The air war over the Somme also intensified, with both sides using aircraft for reconnaissance, bombing, and dogfighting. The fighting at the Somme saw some of the most intense and sustained combat of the war. One of the key objectives for the British was the village of Tapeville, which sat atop a ridge that commanded much of the surrounding area. The battle for Tapeville became a microcosm of the wider struggle, with the village changing hands several times over the course of the battle. By the time the British finally captured it in late September, the village had been reduced to rubble, and thousands of men had died in the effort. As the weeks turned into months, the toll of the Somme continued to mount. By November, the weather had deteriorated further, with heavy rain turning the battlefield into a quagmire. The battle finally came to an end on November 18th, 1916, when the Allies called off the offensive. The results were sobering. The Allies had advanced a mere 6 miles at the deepest point of the front, and the cost had been staggering. The British suffered around 420,000 casualties, the French approximately 200,000, and the Germans over 500,000. In total, more than 1 million men had been killed, wounded, or were missing by the end of the battle. Yet, despite the horrific losses, the battle had no decisive outcome. The front lines remained largely unchanged, and the war would drag on for another 2 years. The Battle of the Somme left a profound impact on all who fought there. For many, it epitomized the futility and senseless slaughter of World War I, the sheer scale of the casualties, the inhuman conditions of trench warfare, and the apparent disregard for human life by the military leadership became the defining image of the war. The battle also had a lasting effect on British society, with nearly every town and village across the country losing sons, brothers, and fathers in the slaughter. The psychological scars of the Somme would haunt veterans for the rest of their lives, and the memory of the battle became a symbol of the horrors of war. Yet, despite the terrible cost, the Battle of the Somme was not without significance. It marked the first time that the British Army had taken the lead in a major offensive on the Western Front, and it was a testing ground for new tactics and technologies that would shape the future of warfare. The use of tanks, though limited in their impact at the Somme, heralded a new era of mechanized warfare. The battle also demonstrated the importance of artillery and air power in modern combat, lessons that would be applied with devastating effect in later battles. In the end, the Battle of the Somme stands as a grim reminder of the human cost of war. It was a battle fought on an industrial scale, where men were sent into the meat grinder of trench warfare, and where victory was measured in inches. The Somme may not have achieved the decisive breakthrough that the Allies had hoped for, but it played a crucial role in wearing down the German army and shifting the balance of power on the Western Front. The battle also left an indelible mark on the collective memory of the nations involved, shaping how future generations would remember the First World War. As we look back on the Battle of the Somme, we are reminded of the incredible sacrifices made by those who fought there. It was a battle that tested the limits of human endurance and revealed the true horrors of war. Today, the Somme is a place of pilgrimage, where the descendants of those who fought and died come to remember and reflect on the events of 1916. The scars of the battlefield remain, a testament to the scale of the conflict and the enduring legacy of the Great War.